Hola ballers, welcome back to Lies of P, Lies of Pinocchio, where the lies are starting to take shape. There's something strange happening. Our lovely Sophia in the hotel is suggesting I might be a real boy. Or I'm growing into a real boy, just like the original Pinocchio. I'm going to be a real boy. So we'll see where that goes along with the story. Few things today. This is going to be a weird one. I'm really interested in discussion. So I want to preface... No, I'll preface in a sec. The big statement. I don't know if I like this game. And that seems weird, right? You should know whether you like it or not. I don't. I still am, like, really on the fence of, like, I don't know if this is good or not. Because I keep seeing things that I just really don't like. But then I have moments where I'm like, this is cool, this is fun, this is great, this is satisfying, this is... and then something happens that's just immensely frustrating. And you're like, this is just not... This is stupid. Really stupid. So, I did a couple of really nice bosses. I got a rematch against one of the earlier bosses. I think it was the first boss, the clown, the puppet master, but now modified in some way. This was fantastic. This was such a good boss. One of the early bosses, and that's where I'm going with this. It feels to me, as a general thought as we're talking here, is that as they got towards mid to late game, they kind of just ran out of stuff to do, or they'd used a lot of their creative potential. And I would equate it somewhat to Subnautica versus their DLC, the Frozen one, where they had tremendously amazing ideas, just wonderful creativity for the original Subnautica, and they did super, super well. And they're like, we need to expand on this, and they expanded by, like, going on land for a lot of it, and we were like, it's not bad. It's not a bad game. I had fun with it, like I am here, but it's not quite what we signed up for. Do you get what I'm saying? That happens sometimes, right? It's like, oh, yeah, but, yeah, it's just not as good. I would also equate it to, like, Resident Evil 2 Remake. Exceptional. Phenomenal. Resident Evil 3 Remake. Not quite. So, what happened that has led to this, like, I don't know. So, yeah, let's break it down a little bit. So, the level design and mob layout I talked about yesterday, they've fallen into a very, very strict pattern at this point, which is kind of just randomly placed mobs that are designed to frustrate. So they're sneaky, they're hidden in corners, and they're usually just... They have something like 20 one-shot enemies. So I went through a train station again. I went back to the original game start location, because there's been an earthquake. And what's happened now is all the ergo has, like, popped out of the ground and stuff like that. So what you'll have is 12 or 20 just really random low-health enemies that are just stood sort of aimlessly in corridors. And you one-shot them. You just run up and kill them. No problem at all. You'll do that all day. And then there'll be just this other enemy, and sometimes they even look like the normal enemies that just have 10 to 15 times the amount of HP and can one-shot you. And it's just dotted into the random area for some reason. And then they add some stuff on top of it to make it annoying. So they'll fill it with, like, decay eggs that respawn. Can't I burn them? Can't I do... I have a flamethrower arm, you know, something like that to get rid of it. Nope, they just put these constantly respawning decay eggs in there to add more stuff, and then they'll put a couple of fast enemies next to the big scary one, and that just repeats sort of endlessly. At this point, every area you go to just has this same thing. So you do that in the train station, and then you come out of the train station into the courtyard with the original game. 10 or 12 enemies just dotted around the area, and then just one big guy just sort of lumped in there for some reason. Then you'll go to the next area in the town, same again. Then you'll go through the now cracked and destroyed area of near the hotel, and same again. So they finally fallen into this pattern. I was like, okay, and they've been at this pattern for a while now. So I was like, okay, everything sort of makes sense. And then now I have the mindset, you see, of like, when is the big enemy going to show up? Oh, there it is. Fine. Okay. That's not a big deal. I'm still enjoying the combat and still having fun, but like the gameplay loop is now very much a loop. So I then encountered one of the better bosses I fought so far. Like, the Puppet Master remake was really good. I killed that on like a second or third try, something like that. I actually thought there was going to be a phase 2, because we're definitely later in the game now. But no, it was just a one-phase fight that made sense, all nicely telegraphed. And that's what reminded me, and what brought me to this conversation, is like, that's how they were making bosses at the beginning of the game. Good telegraphing, not infinite stamina enemies that just constantly wombo combo you for, you know, an extended period of time and have almost zero downtime in between them. This was like the original creative stuff, because the puppets are the puppets are the highlight of the game. The puppet stuff where they're making like giant Pinocchios and just really weird creations, like Murphy, the big policeman that comes down off the building. You do the remake kind of with Swamp Monster, but Swamp Monster has tentacles and all sorts of constant stamina attacks and things. But those original like 5 or 6 bosses that were the puppet creations, that was the real creativity side of it. It's like we can make some really cool mechanical things that have got this like Cuphead puppet style that are going on with them, and that worked really well. And then they turned it more into more Bloodborne-esque, you know, tried to be a bit Lovecraftian with modified and mutations and things like that, and zombie-type enemies. That's where it kind of fell off a little bit. And then when you get back to, when you see the puppets again, you're like, oh yeah, that was really cool. And actually, like, the gameplay made a lot of sense then as well. So that was, again, an up. And then it went kind of, I think this is the best boss I've done so far. It was frustrating, but I loved the design of it. I couldn't tell you the name of it, but it was like a weeping lady in a very small room at the top of a ladder. She did have some of the things I don't like infinite stamina. Some people really got issue with this infinite stamina idea. It's like, Souls does it. Not really. Like, even Malenia, which is considered one of the hardest bosses ever made in Souls, and Orphan of Kos, do nasty, vicious attacks, but they also have the downtime to match the fact that they did these horrible attacks. Like, and if you do things like parry them, which you can do, it's a proper parry. It's not a cheap, nasty, cheeky parry, which we're about to get to in a second, where the game breaks its own rules in order to be cheap, is what I would say. And I had a really good fight against this. I had to come up with some nice strategies because it summons a clone of itself, but my flame arm is able to like cleave them both down. I've added the explosion to it so I could get rid of the clone very quickly, and then mostly could parry a lot of the attacks. It was a little excessive, but it was fun. I enjoyed that. It was a good kill. Then we get to what is the real crux of this. We've reached now the Alchemist Island. We've also unlocked the DLC, but the recommendation from nearly everybody was like, do the DLC after base game. It's designed that way. I was like, okay, that's cool. I'll take that advice. So we carried on to Alchemist Island, which I believe is probably the last area of the game, pretty much. And worked through there. Same thing again. Bunch of small one-shotable enemies, and then one giant one just waiting for you in a pit. Or one that's just protecting the way to go. That's, you know, you're going to maybe die once and then come back and kill it. Then we got the biggest downer. This is possibly what I'm about to describe now. One of the worst bosses I've ever seen in a Souls-like genre ever. Like, and that includes, like, the 40-plus DS2 bosses, and Covetous Demon and things like that. This thing just sucked. And it sucked for all the wrong reasons. Now, here's the preface I was talking about earlier. When we talk about these things in the Souls-like genre, immediately people go to, it was too hard for you. No. Absolutely wrong. Like, completely wrong. Difficulty, I have no issue with. I talked about Malenia. We talked about Alatreon. We talk about these major bosses we've done in the last 12 months or so, where they've taken over a day to kill. Like, hours and hours of tries, you know? I think Malenia was like a couple of hundred attempts. Alatreon was like 4 days. And had a joy and a blast. And every single time I did a pull on those bosses, I had a blast, because they were just genuinely hard and fair and played by the rules of the game. No problem with that whatsoever. Mythic Raider experience. I've spent months working on a boss. It's fine. The difficulty is not the issue. And I will preface also say there are things you could do in this fight to make your time easier if difficulty was the problem. I could get faster weapons. I could utilize slightly different arms. There are lots of little tweaks I could have done, but those weren't my issues with this fight. What fight is it? It is the return of the Black Rabbit Council fight. This time, with the added twist, is that you have 3 of them active at the same time. Once you kill 2 of them, then the 4th mega guy appears as well. So there's 4 bosses total, 3 from the beginning, kill 1, kill 2, and then the last boss will appear. Okay, so on first pull, I knew I was going to hate this. Some people will love this fight. That's fine. It's my opinion, whatever. immediately you notice that there's RNG to this fight, and the AI is programmed in a way that is just designed to try and force a certain outcome. I really dislike that. I want to be able to adapt and choose and strategize about how I would deal with this fight. That's not how this works. So they clearly really, really wanted all three of them to stay alive for as long as humanly possible. And the way they did that is make one of them hyper aggressive, to the point where if you run full speed, and my character is not overweight or anything like that, we're in normal weight, their natural attacks with the distance they can cover with a lunge or a leap will not only match you, but outpace you. So there were several times you can run full speed to try and get line of sight to repair your weapon or to get a heal off, and they will still be on you, even if you've covered the entire arena. And if you're... Certainly once the big guy comes down in the end, if you're running away from him, he will just match you toe for toe and just keep going. And I was like, they will just chase you almost endlessly until you run out of stamina, and then they will just kill you in one hit. And I was like, okay, I see what's going on. So what we have here is these three bosses, where one of them is activated and becomes hyper aggressive, typically till that one hits 50% HP, and then they will activate another one, and then the other two will become almost docile. Kind of. They will move to the back. But what they decided to do was give all three of them some sort of way of messing you up. So, for example, the guy with the flame sword also has a hook to drag you across the arena, which in and of itself isn't too bad, unless they happen to have pathed near each other, in which case they will activate their guard mode, is what I'll call it here. What is guard mode? If you try to attack one of the docile enemies... so let's say you've got one of them low, and you're like, okay, you've taken one to 50%, so that one has become docile, and then another one's become active. I would really prefer to kill one of these off, so I'm dealing with 2 instead of 3. What they will then do is they will sort of like path randomly, but not really do anything, and then occasionally they will do their interrupt annoying thing, which is like the hook from the flame guy. The little bunny lady will throw daggers at you, and the spear guy will throw bombs at you. And you can hear sound cues to try and dodge them, unless you're already in an animation. And the whole point of this is to flinch your character, because every single one of them attacks flinches your character, which stops you doing whatever you're currently doing. So if you're mid-swing and you get hit by a dagger, then you'll just stop, and that generally leads the one that's being hyper aggressive to be able to unleash a flurry of attacks on you, right? That's the idea. But if you want to say, oh, I want to finish off one of these, and so you run at it, what you'll do is if you got in like a slight, they have a radius detector around them. It's very obvious when you're playing it, is that they will then unleash some sort of very, very quick, instantaneous attack that's very dangerous. They will just like start slapping you. The only one who didn't really suffer from that was the little bunny lady. I was able to take her out very quickly, and that was kind of led to point number 2. This room is so dark in many areas, and she is practically invisible, at least on my screen. I play on a very good OLED monitor. She was basically invisible. If she didn't have her acid weapons on, seeing where she was genuinely almost impossible on the screen. She mixed in perfectly with the background. It might not come across in the footage, but that's what I was dealing with. Let alone see whether she's winding up or what attack she's about to do, so you can parry and land it and things. She was very, very frustrating and also very, very quick. And she could also knock you right in the air, which then led to like you landing and then grenade landing on you, or being hooked as soon as you landed and getting minced into pieces. On top of that, you could just get mullered into the floor, depending on where they pathed. So if you got hooked at a certain point and the spear guy happened to be next to you, and that would trigger his guard defense, and they would both start attacking you, and you're constantly just like being flinched. And when you're flinched, you can't then pull off the parry. Like there's so many times, or the dodge. So many times I'm pressing a button to like, okay, I need to like dodge distance here or do something, and you just can't. Your character is just being constantly, you just have to take it. I will say they did give some grace here in that the fact that the enemies don't do a great deal of damage. They don't. They do actually very, very little damage. It's being comboed that's the problem. And then you mix in that this game is very much designed from the ground up, with lock-on being a primary feature. I said yesterday, I primarily play these games without lock-on. In this one, I found it, like, required. Like, very much required. While you can do it without it, sure, it's kind of, like, it's built with that in mind. And that means if you end up with depending on trying to position enemies, that becomes very difficult because you're circle strafing around, and if they can put their back to a wall, the other enemies are behind you. So regularly you'll have one that's like crept up on you. You're kind of looking behind you. You're doing all this kind of stuff. So all that's going on. Now, that's bad enough, I think. Like, it was very frustrating to just deal with them, especially with the hyperspeed, and then some of them being hyper-aggressive. They have very specific combos that if you get caught by the first hit, and you can get better at all this. And I did. And then the technique became clear. Once I'd killed 2 of them, then we saw the big guy appear, and he is permanently aggressive. So now you have 2 enemies up that are both activated. They don't go docile at this point. They will just constantly be relentless on you. And the big guy is able to lunge a good, like, 30% distance of the arena with certain attacks. Like, if you are fighting one of them and he's winding up, you have to, like, either completely stop, which opens you up to the guy you're fighting, or you just have to be aware this guy is going to be able to lunge across the room and try and do something about it as best you can. Now, he also adds in a new attack, which is like a shockwave. Thankfully, that wasn't too bad. You could just dodge through it. It was no issue. But, I got better at this fight. I didn't like it. I was like, this is just very frustrating. The combat doesn't suit this kind of gameplay. It's just designed to annoy you with all the disruptions and things. I was like, there's a lot of elements here that are just designed to annoy you. And it's not that it's hard. It's just that sometimes you just get battered. And then the way the game physically, like, interacts with combat doesn't suit this environment, like, at all. A smaller room with 3 things going on that can sometimes pair together, sometimes not, and it's entirely out of your control. But I got better at it, and then the situation was, all right, what we want to do, because they don't regenerate health, is kill one, take both of the next 2 down to, like, as low as possible, kill one, and then kill the other one, so that when the big guy actually appears, there's a little grace period, is that it's just me versus him. Nice sound strategy. So I pulled that off, like, after a few pulls. I want to be clear on this. I didn't spend more than an hour here. It wasn't hard. It was getting used to the frustration of it. That's what was annoying. I'm getting used to the frustration of it and how these guys work in order to get around what they do. But not hard. This is not even the longest time I've spent on a boss in this game by a long way, I don't think. I think Swamp Monster was probably the longest. So the big guy comes down. I'm like, you know what? The big guy is actually done pretty well because he's designed for the earlier fight to be up all the time. So his moves, similar to Puppet Master, are telegraphed pretty well. They're all pretty clear. There's a reasonable pause between even swings, so you can line it up, assess which one he's doing, and get it right. He doesn't seem to have he doesn't seem to have really cheap moves, such as like 1-frame attacks, where you're like, oh, okay, like I'd have to like play this many times to recognize that what's happening, you know, things like that. And I was doing pretty well. And I actually got him into his stagger mode, and I'd saved my Fable attacks for it because I was like, okay, I can't wind up a charged attack here because he's too fast with my slow weapon. So what I'm going to do is like when that stagger pops, I'm going to pop the Fable attack, which will take him into stagger. We'll get a big riposte, and then we should be in a good position then because he doesn't have huge amounts of health. And I did that. I actually had a choice to make here. It was very interesting. My weapon was nearly destroyed, but his stagger bar was up. But I had about 10% left. I think this is enough. As long as I don't do anything stupid, this should be enough to like really do some big damage. And then I also needed to heal. I had a heal available. So I was like, this was absolutely the correct choice to make. And I would do it again every time. Stagger bar is up. I have my Fable ready. I need to heal, but the correct play here is to fire off the Fable because there was a window, riposte him, do massive damage so that stagger window doesn't fall off, and then heal, repair weapon, go into the next bit with a reasonably high-sized health bar and him probably on very low health. That is the correct choice to make here. But they pulled the cheapness. So the stagger bar appeared. I fabled him. He went into the stagger animation so we could riposte. I saw the riposte thing appear. And then they decided to put it behind him only, so you have to go behind him. So typically in these games, you can do a front or a back. Not this time, you had to go behind him. And once you get to that position, which I got there very quickly, he instantly cancels the fact that he's in stagger. It breaks the rules of its own game. And he got up and just one-shot me. He not only just broke the stagger, he just swung at me and killed me. And Yeah, I just sat back. This was the height of the frustration for me. Like, you're now not only making a very frustrating fight where the camera's a nightmare, the design of these enemies is a nightmare, but now you're breaking the rules of your own game. And a lot of people are huge fans of this game, so went, they baited you so hard. I'm like, well, technically you're right. It is a bait. They're baiting you into playing the rules of the game. And then saying, well, you can't, like, it's being clever. And this is what I was talking about childish decisions. Like, it's just, it is. That's all it is. It's something that would be funny to a kid. Like, oh, but what if it, like, didn't work that way at this point in the game and you did something else? And I'm like, what? I'm already frustrated with this fight. And now you're also being cheap at the end of it. I consider this to be very cheap. Like I said, some of the hardest fights in these games still obey their ordinary rules, unless it's made clear pretty early. So somebody equated it to Simon in E33 with the deleting the raid, the deleting the party mechanic. Here's the thing with that, while I defend that, is two things. One, they show you Renoir doing that very early in the game, is able to remove people from the fight. So you're aware this kind of mechanic exists pretty early, and Simon also does the individual one pretty early. So you're like, okay, that's something we've established from like the first quarter of the game, is like this is very much a thing, and other normal enemies do it, the big giant monsters that kind of like sucks one of your characters away. This is not unusual. And he does the whole party wipe at the end. I'm fine with that, and you know why? It's the very, very last super optional boss that you should be doing in the whole game. There is nothing else that's after that in terms of difficulty. This is the pinnacle. This is the end of your RPG. This is entirely optional. It's not a required situation. And it's designed around the idea that you've done everything else in the game, and you probably have the ability to stack to make a good party in two ways, which I did. It was perfectly lined up. It's a twist. It's funny. It's not a bait. And now you can also work around it. You can figure out, like, oh, it's at a certain health percentage. I can now figure that out and adapt to it. So I don't think it's an equivalence whatsoever. And I do think about the bosses like Millennia and Orphan of Kos and all those. If you parry them and you get it right and you land it, you get the reward. Because you did a good thing. That's the rule of the game. You landed it. Sweet, dude. Like, good job you. Because that's not easy to do in certain scenarios. If you got it, you're good. If you manage to stagger and build up something like that, or along those ways to get that riposte or to get that backstab, you deserve it. And you get the reward from it. And here they decide to pull the rug from under your feet and like a ha 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 ha. And I'm like, nah, man. Like, it's just cheap. It's really, really cheap. And then it'll go up and do something great again. So that was that. I wanted to talk about this because it is literally one of the worst fights I've ever done. It wasn't hard. Killed it pretty quickly. Just frustrating and designed from the ground up, seemingly to frustrate with the way it is. Constant interruptions. Very, very, very fast ultra combo enemies. Just in a mess. Just plonked into a room with really weird twists that were just like not following the basic premise of what we're supposed to be doing here. So I didn't like that. And I would love to see your thoughts on it as well, especially those of you who really like it. And I would also question, like, do you like it because you've learned all the, like, nuances of it? Because that's what I did. Is like, okay, this guy works this way. This guy works a totally different way. This guy's a threat. This guy, what's the order of operations here? Which is normal progress stuff, but it was like, who is least frustrating to have alive? Was kind of how I did it. But I find these kinds of discussions interesting because I also think this kind of stuff breeds a level of, like, I told you so or ego in some people for overcoming these fights. As I said, I was very surprised to find out that another member of my team who is an actual has speedrun Bloodborne, has played all the Souls-likes and Souls games multiple times through, loves these genres of games, actually stopped playing after the Swamp Monster. And he kept that secret from me until I asked him about it. And he went, I'll be honest with you, the things you've been saying happened to me. And that's when I stopped playing. I was like, okay, so I'm not the only one. So there must be others that like me out there. But fight design like this, yeah, not a fan. Not a fan. But I do believe we're getting towards the end of the main story. And you might say, like, what if you're not happy, why do you put it down? I am happy, like, most of the time. And then something lets me down. You see what I'm saying? It's not a bad game. It's just missing something. And I'm even more curious now about the DLC. I want to know what they did based on feedback. And I haven't gone back and checked because I want to keep my opinions to myself. I might be totally off base, and I'm okay with that. People might be like, nah, loved it, thought it was great, blah, blah, blah. Awesome, that's cool. But this is what I'm seeing. This is my experience. I am bearing in mind I might have a bias here. I just finished Expedition 33, which is also a very parry-heavy game. Into another parry-heavy game, which I didn't know it was. I didn't know it was. But so maybe I am a little parry-fatigued of doing this over and over again. Maybe. That's entirely possible too. So I do equate that. We're not children over here. We can find our own mistakes. You know what I mean? We can find our own follies. But I'm going to keep pushing on because I'm more curious than anything at this point. I'm curious. So we'll see where we go. Bye, guys.